We are back, and you are joining Testosterone Fantasy Sports. I'm your host, Jeff Pearson, with you as always. My esteemed co-host today, Eric Nelson. I'd like to thank you once again. It's a mighty dapper jersey you got going on there, buddy.
Yeah, you know, I saw this laying around here in the studio. I said, I'm going to put this on and do what you guys do. When in Rome,
that's
do
right.
what the Romans do.
Yes, that's right. Well, let's hope you can bring Adrian a little bit of luck this weekend as he goes up against the Denver Broncos.
Well, it's funny. The minute I put this jersey on, 11 guys were in the box. And I'm not that fast.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh, that's funny. No, but speaking of Broncos, I decided to don the Boise State Broncos jersey in fond reminiscence of my favorite college team's lucky victory against my favorite football players' former team, the Oklahoma Sooners, in the last year's Fiesta Bowl. Eric, that was the best football game I've ever seen. I don't know. I know you watch a lot of football too, but kind of shifting gears a little bit, what was your take on that game last year?
Well, that was one of those, ESPN instant classics.
Yeah.
I think they were rerunning that as soon as the next day. It was unbelievable. First of all, Boise State, kind of the little engine that could, going up against a superpower like Oklahoma. You had so much drama, so much great theater in the game. And I know Adrian Peterson, I talked to him about this a few weeks ago. It hurts him.
Still.
It hurts him and the Sooners. He gave credit to your Broncos, though. He's a humble guy. He said give credit where credit is due. But don't think that hasn't, stuck in the craw of everybody who wears Sooner red.
Yeah. Well, I love you, Adrian, and I just got to say that the roots run deep for me, coming from Idaho, and I played my high school ball on that blue turf and stuff. So I got a lot of love for the Broncos back there, but I am a Minnesotan now, and the Vikings are my favorite team, bar none. So I want to see nothing more than a title come to this town and our own beloved purple to hoist that Vince Lombardi trophy. And as much as I'm concerned for this season, there is a lot of positivity going forward. But we discussed that in the last segment, so we're going to move on here now to another team. This team is ready to run the table. The 15-0 New England Patriots going to play against the Giants. I see another victory here, Eric. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to bet against New England.
Really is.
And they're playing for their place in history now, and they've just had such a tremendous run. I really never thought we'd see a team go 16-0. I mean, we've seen teams flirt with it in years past. The Broncos did, the Colts have, but somebody always usually rises up and bites you. I really thought the Patriots should have lost to the Ravens in that Monday night game, or maybe the Eagles in the Sunday night game the week before, but they survived those games. Those were big road bumps. So now they go to the Meadowlands. The Giants have nothing to play for. The Giants are going to play Tampa Bay in the playoffs. They're in a situation similar to Dallas. Now, New England, in theory, has nothing to play for. They've sewn up the number one seed. All the playoff games are going to be in Foxborough as long as they're playing in the AFC. But you're trying to go to 16-0. And I think they're going to get it done. And you might have, how about this? On one play, you could have three records fall. If the very first score of the game is Brady to Moss for a touchdown pass, that would tie Brady for the all-time touchdown record in a season with Manning, tie Moss with Rice for touchdown receptions in a single season, and they would surpass the Vikings' single-season scoring record of 556 set in 98. New England's at 551 right now, so there's a lot that could happen Saturday.
Yeah, and those players are going to be up big for that. I really feel like Tom Brady is going to come ready to fire the ball to Randy Moss. Those guys, they really definitely want to see these records fall and for their places to be set in history. And it's just another step in the process for their ultimate goal, which is 19-0 2007 Super Bowl champions. And long about week 8, when Don Shula started to talk a little bit about an asterisk and Nat Moore started to flap his gums a little bit, you could tell that the 72 members of the members of the 72 Dolphins were starting to worry about the fact that they'll never be able to crack the champagne here this season. Their record's about to fall, and like you say, the Giants not really playing for much. I was impressed to see how they ran the ball last weekend. Brandon Jacobs is a nice player, but the Giants, I just think they're up against the monumental, impossible game here. So I don't think that's going to be much more than what we've seen in weeks past.
Yeah, and a few things at play here. First of all, they're on the biggest stage. They're in the Big Apple, New Jersey, right across the river there from New York City. So the NFL couldn't ask for anything more there. This game's an NFL Network game, which meant that most of us wouldn't see it. But a few days ago, the NFL steps in and says CBS and NBC will also broadcast the game, so it's going to be triple casted. Great bold stroke of genius by the league, although Senator Kerry from Massachusetts made some threats to the league. He said, if this isn't on over-the-air TV, we may have a Senate investigation. So even the almighty NFL empire had to listen to Senator Kerry. Right. So that's going to be fun. And then I think about the history the Dolphins made in '72, and I was a little kid back when it happened. I remember them beating the Redskins in Super Bowl VII at the LA Coliseum. And to think now, as you said, 16-0 is huge, but New England has to go to 19-0. If they go 18-1 or 17-1, it's hollow. They've got to run the table. They've got to win 2 more games than Miami. And the Dolphins clearly want to hold on to this record. They covet what they accomplished. And even in the book I wrote, Slices of the NFL, I happened to be down in Miami on the 30-year anniversary of the perfect team. It was a Monday night game. They had a celebration before a Bears game. And let me tell you, these guys think they are disrespected by history because a lot of people still do not call the Dolphins the greatest single team ever in one year. And this is really going to be a dagger for Don Shula and Greasy and Warfield and Zonka and that gang if New England goes 19-0.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see and to witness it happening. And I know that the Dolphins Super Bowl against the Redskins, if it wasn't for a botched snap on an extra point, the Redskins or a field goal attempt, the Redskins intercepting it, taking it to the house, a good chance the Dolphins would have blanked the Redskins in that Super Bowl.
And you know what the irony is? The score would have been 17-0.
I know.
In a 17-0 year. Yeah. You're right. It was one of the great faux pas in NFL history. Yepremian's hands were so small he couldn't grip the football.
Yeah, right. Well, you mentioned your book, Eric, so I'd like to just take a chance to show everybody here the Slices of the NFL. Why don't you tell everybody at home how they can get their hands on a copy of
Yeah, we
your
still
book?
have a lot of copies left. If you're interested, call 763-315-0765. Again, 763-315-0765. I went all around the NFL and interviewed a lot of players and fans and coaches. And like you, Jeff and Jesse and the great people behind this show, I'm an NFL junkie. I snort the chalk lines. I can't get enough. And as much as I'm looking forward to the playoffs, and I know you are, I will be in a semi-state of depression Sunday night because that's the end of the regular season, the end of the rhythm of the noon games, the 3 o'clock games, the night game on Sunday, the Monday night game. You lose games, you lose teams. And I know fantasy guys, they don't know what to do.
I know. Well, all of us are trying to come up with new and exciting ways to play playoff fantasy football. So there's a little bit of a funk. I know I personally am have a little bit of exhaustion from a long season. But I know along about NFL draft time, I start to get the juices flowing again and start to look at who's now coming into the league and some of these fun young players. I think there might be a running back coming in this year who has some abilities, so that'll be fun to see. But one more question about the book. I know you traveled around to all the different stadiums. Which one of them was your favorite?
Well, looking back, I really liked Reliant Stadium in Houston. That's what I'd like to see the Twin Cities get, a retractable roof venue. Where in my world you could leave the roof open for Viking games, bring the elements back to Minnesota football, but then shut the roof if you need to for prep bowls and truck pulls and Republican conventions and wrestling and promise keepers and anything you want to do inside there. It's a beautiful stadium, Reliant. The other one that was tremendous is Seattle Quest Field. And if all goes well, the Vikings will be at Quest Field in Seattle opening up the playoffs if they get in. We know they'll play the Seattle Seahawks. That's an outdoor venue, but it's extremely loud. Acoustically, Jeff, they built it where it retains the noise. It's a tremendous stadium.
Yeah, and you really, I'm sure you don't get the full feeling of what that stadium has to offer by just seeing it on TV, but when you do see it on TV, it really is a sight to see. And another great segue, Eric, because the Seattle Seahawks is our next matchup. They go to Atlanta, and although there really isn't much for them to play for, I just think they're so much of a better team that they're going to crush the Falcons. What's your take here on this game?
Yeah, I think the Seahawks are going to want to finish strong. I mean, they're probably in a similar situation to the Cowboys, where you'll start seeing some substitution patterns as the game wears on. But what a miserable year for the Atlanta Falcons, too. I mean, I can't think of a franchise that maybe has had a worse run of luck in recent memory with the Mike Vick fiasco and then Bobby Petrino bolting in the middle of the night for Arkansas, then Bill Parcells rejecting Arthur Blank. I never thought I'd feel sorry for a billionaire, but I feel bad for Arthur Blank. I mean, he's had a terrible season. But I think Seattle will win this game. Seattle's playing pretty good football.
Yeah, they really, really have been doing well. A couple other teams from the NFC West, St. Louis going to Arizona in what everybody thought at the beginning of the season would be for a playoff berth. Neither of these teams head into the playoffs. In fact, St. Louis having a horrible season, only 3 victories. Give me your take on what we can expect out of this game, Eric.
Well, you're right. The Rams, I mean, let's go back to when I did one of the early shows with you guys. I think a lot of people thought the Rams might be a challenger for the NFC playoffs at the minimum. They've been a huge disappointment. The Cardinals, I think they're trying to get to 8-8, or maybe 8-8, which for them, that's progress. So it's a game that means a lot for the Cardinals. At least they'll be able to build on finishing 500. And it's not the last football game this season, though, in Arizona. That's the site of the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
we just know the Cardinals and Rams won't be in it.
Yeah, neither of those teams will be. Well, the Cardinals have had some positivity of late. They've been involved in almost every game they've played. They haven't gotten crushed by anybody. In my opinion, Ken Whisenhunt really putting his stamp on this team in a nice way. Didn't think that they were going to be a playoff team just because, in my mind, when you have a new coaching staff, it makes it more difficult for a team to have a ton of success as the players get to know the coaches and everything. But at a potential 8-8, they look pretty good, especially with an offensive line that's not that great.
No, and the Cardinals, to me, are a team that they can't get over the hump. They're like the Detroit Lions. Remember, a few weeks ago, the Cardinals were right thick smack dab in the middle of the playoff chase. They had a few bad losses, and here they are again, not going to be in the playoffs. But I think they're making slow and steady progress. The question there is going to be who's going to play quarterback next year. Matt Leinert's been hurt. Kurt Warner has done a pretty nice job in relief. I love Larry Fitzgerald Jr., who's from the Twin Cities here. I know his dad, Larry Sr., well, do radio shows with him. He's a tremendous receiver. Anquan Bolden. There's a lot of pieces in place there. I think the Cardinals are on the rise.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that they're a fun team to watch here over the offseason and going into next year. Could be one of those teams that makes some nice waves. A couple of teams, again, who aren't going to be doing anything after this weekend. Cincinnati going down to Miami. This game's fairly ugly. Between these two teams, there's 7 victories and only 1 for the Dolphins, and it was everything that they could do to get that 1 vic. So tell me what you think about this game. Are you even going to pay any attention to this one at all?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I pay attention to all of them, although this one's going to be real low on my radar screen.
Yeah.
But, the one thing the Dolphins have to remember, if you're a Dolphins player and you want to stay there, and maybe you don't, but Bill Parcells is now in charge. So I'm sure he's evaluating, and he's gone over a lot of the past games. But this is a chance to maybe make one final positive impression on the guy who's going to shape the team down the road. So the Bengals, to me, a disappointment. I like Marvin Lewis. I think he's a pretty good coach, but I don't think there's any doubt the last 2 years they have been a major disappointment after a playoff run 2 years ago. What's going to happen with the Bengals? I mean, there's too much talent there for this team not to be in the playoff hunt.
Seems to me like Marvin Lewis is definitely on the hot seat here. I'll be interested to see what they might do over the offseason. There's some good names out there of head coaches who could come in and make an impact. The first in my mind of which is Bill Cowher, and how much would the Bengals love to bring Bill Cowher back to this AFC North division where he could go up against his own former team.
Well, that would be a major coup if the Bengals did that. I don't know if they're going to make a move with Lewis or not. Now, Lewis, give him credit. He got that thing out of the gutter. And he changed the culture there, and he's a victim of his own expectations. He raised the bar. Now the last 2 years they've gone down, and because they've thought they were going to keep progressing. But Cowher, I don't know if Cowher's ready to come back yet. That's what he's publicly saying. The other hot coach that you're hearing about and will continue to hear about is Jason Garrett, the offensive coordinator in Dallas. And I think Jerry Jones has a decision to make. Do I lock this guy up and behind the closed doors at Texas Stadium say, Jason, be patient. You'll take over when Wade is done. Maybe you give Wade another year. Or does Jason Garrett take off and go?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that we will find out about that over the offseason. In my mind, the Cowboys would be crazy to let Garrett go because he is one of the best offensive young minds in the NFL.
I think you're right. I mean, they rave about him. I know Troy Aikman thinks he's the most brilliant football mind he's been around. And my hunch is Jerry Jones will not let him go.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. An NFC North divisional game, Detroit going to Green Bay. Detroit having all of the hopes at the early part of the season. They flapped their lips about it a little bit too much, in my opinion. Started to lick that knife and slowly have been bleeding out ever since then. Going to Green Bay, don't you think they just get crushed here again, or do you think they might have something for Brett Favre in his pack?
You know, I think if you're the Detroit Lions, you look at this like maybe Arizona looks at that game with St. Louis. Hey, we're not going to the playoffs, but let's finish positive. They got to win last week against the Chiefs. Let's try to beat the Packers, a team they historically don't ever beat, and let's try to build on something. Because you're right, they were talking smack. John Kitna, 10 wins, guaranteed, all that stuff. If they win this one, I think they get to 8. So, granted, it's still a disappointment, but by Lions standards, it's not that big big of a disaster. Now, the question to me though is still, how does Matt Millen survive another year where Detroit does not make the playoffs? It's unbelievable that Matt Millen still has a job.
Well, I've heard some interesting rumblings out of Detroit. I'd like to get your take on them. I've heard that a lot of the players are unhappy with Mike Martz and his usage of the running back position specifically. Apparently, Roy Williams has been very verbal about his displeasure with the offensive coordinator there, talking about possibly wanting to leave that town. Is there anything that you know about that you'd like to share with us about that specific situation?
Well, I don't know for sure what's going to happen with Mike Martz.
Yeah.
I think he's one of those hot-button coaches, though. Either you're in love with him or you want to move him out. I mean, in St. Louis, it was kind of that same way when he was the head coach. Sometimes he's too smart for his own good. He's the mad professor. And I believe he stays up late at night drawing X's and O's onto the wall in his bedroom, trying to figure out a way to get Kevin Jones or Roy Williams or whoever into the mix. So it's clear, though, that this year didn't work the way it should have for that team. That free fall they went into was a disaster. The Dallas game was just a debacle. I mean, that's the one they should have won. Had they won that game, I think maybe they are in the playoff chase today. Maybe we're talking about it. But they couldn't get over the hump against Dallas. To me, Dallas had 2 games they won where the losses for the teams they beat were devastating. It was when they beat Detroit and when they beat Buffalo on a Monday night.
Yeah, no kidding about that. So Dallas has been able to stick the dagger in the heart of a couple different teams. Let's hope they're able to do it again here this weekend against the Redskins. And because we're up against the clock, we're going to take a very short break. We'll be right back with you. This is Testosterone Sports coming at you Week 17.
What's up, fantasy football junkies? It's Jesse. You're checking us out behind the scenes on the set of Testosterone Fantasy Sports, the #1 fantasy football show for prognostication in the Twin Cities area on cable access. You want to make sure you check out our website as well while you're here looking at the show. Go online, testosteronesports.com. There's so much stuff on there for you content-wise. You want to see the rankings, you want to see the writers' pages, but above all, you want to see this video content that we put out there updated on a weekly basis. So if you missed the show, check it out online at testosteronesports.com.
Hey everybody, we'd really like to thank all of our supporters. We here at Testosterone Sports put a lot of effort into the production that we do on a weekly basis. Go on there, specifically come onto the Fat Chat. You get a chance to interact with all of us, with other people around the Twin Cities. We just love fantasy football, and it's something that we do on a regular basis, so check it out. Join with us to win in your league. It's something we love, and we just appreciate everything that you guys do to join in to be the 4th member of Testosterone.
Can't get enough of the yeast or all these guys. You have rants and raves you want to read. Check out our writers' pages on the website, testosteronesports.com. I go off on a weekly basis. Jeff brags about how good his team is in our league. Jesse has some crazy stuff on there. There's a guy named Will who drops some things I can't talk about on television. Check out our writers' pages, testosteronesports.com, for a little more of the yeast.